Los territorios indígenas del Caribe Sur son parte del sitio Patrimonio Mundial de la Humanidad, Reservas de la Cordillera de Talamanca-La Amistad. Gracias a la existencia de 8 territorios indígenas, se mantiene la conectividad biológica y la conservación de más de 128.000 hectáreas de bosque. Estos territorios están habitados por pueblos indígenas, Cabecar y Bribri, los cuales mantienen sus tradiciones culturales y su forma de vida en total respeto por la naturaleza. El territorio indígena Nairi Awari recibe visitantes en 3 comunidades: Siniquichá, Dueri y Tsiobata. Se ofrecen caminatas en senderos, hospedaje en tiendas de acampar, alimentación tradicional y guías acreditados por el ICT.
Okay, today we're going to take a little walk around the property. This is my office, which is just a little bodega, used to be a storage building. It's earthbag. This is a Laurel hardwood door. This is me walking out of my office. That's the back building with the 3 big bedrooms. Let's go back there. This is a bathroom. It's got a bath in there. But it may be obsolete now with the shower. And this is the big back building. This is the last one we did, which we kind of nailed, right? It's just a whole different way of building earthbag. And this is the original 2 bathrooms. And we have the 3rd now closer to the front house. That's my pueblo, my neighborhood. That's my neighbor Goyito. He owns a banana plantation. This is where, let's take a look at one of the back rooms here. This is it. Everything here was built by my brother-in-law. The desk, I bought that. That's obviously a gaming chair. The bed frames, there's a single bed there. I meditate on the single beds. The ropero, the clothing thing there. You can see the depth of the windows, the walls right through the window. They're about 22 inches. Really nice texture. I like it anyways. And this is the huge back balcony. This must be 1,000 square feet of, I don't know, is it 1,000? Yeah, I don't know, 800-900. Gotta do a little lime paint job here on the concrete, but we're almost done here. There's my back balcony, got its final varnish today. There's around the pool, another coat of white waterproof paint going on that. And this is a sitting area in the back. Let's take a look at another room here. They're all pretty much the same, but they're just, this is where the kids stay when they come. There's a computer in every room because I'm like the ultimate computer junkie, right? And there we go. Beautiful rooms. They're so, I don't know, you have to experience staying in an earthbag house. It's just like you feel, I don't know, like you're in like a cave almost, like a monastery. And there's a couple of my neighbors down there. Those are Nicaraguans. They're fairly poor. That's the master bedroom where Rosemary and I sleep. This is the bathroom and shower that was just done today. Coming back out, this is the back of the building. That's the front of the bathroom. And here's the bathroom that just got finished today. Not quite finished. I gotta get a couple more water tanks and get them raised up, and then, yeah. But that's quite nice. There's the shower. We're putting an electrical shower head on for hot water. And there's the extra bathroom. So we never used to have a bathroom up front. This might be the best door my brother-in-law's ever done. That's all Laurel wood. I don't even think you can get Laurel in North America. This, of course, you all know, this is the sauna, fire-burning sauna. Very primitive, very rustic, just a 3mm plastic there to keep the steam in. There's my Lulu. That's a little bit of mold on the back abutments to support the earthbag wall, but we got to paint like once a year with lime. Just buy a bag of lime. Here's the cat congregation. These dudes, it takes a long time for these guys to let you pet you, right? Like some of them, it was over a year, but now they're all good. There's the youngest there, little black cat. This is where we wash some of the dishes here out in the back. Just finished what we call an arm of bananas. There's probably about 200 bananas on an arm. Those are the last of the plantains. Dry storage. Cooking area outside. This is where we sit up front and talk. And that's where the dog is. You can only have one off a leash at a time. What else here? My cooking area or food prep area. Sweetie, come on, what are you doing? Holy spamoli, what is she doing? They never do that. I don't know. Here's the front house. Again, beautiful door, as you can see. It's always a little bit dark back here. I like it that way though, because my philosophy when I built the house, holy spamoli, what are you doing, sweetie? She never does that. Here's these desks I sit at. I have one in my office. So it's just 2 concrete pillars and a slab of wood. It takes 2 strong men to pick this wood up. It's like all of the stained glass windows were done by my friend Carla. There's where we watch our movies and such. This is an extra bed. Nobody ever really sleeps up here. All the sofas, the blue sofas, were built for meditating. Ah, come on, sweetie. What are you doing? She's never done that. Clawed onto my legs before. And yeah, this is an indoor kitchen area. Couple working stoves. Sweetie, what am I missing here? Like a dog, is there trouble? Ay, ay, ay. She's doing there. What's going on, sweetie? Okay, and that's the tour of the property. That's the mountain that came down a little while ago. There's the sauna and the new bathroom. Yeah, that's pretty much the whole place. Casa McDonald. Sleeps 12 if you come in couples.
And there you go. I just did a walk around today, so I thought I would just do a video of the property now that the bathroom and shower are done. Oh, what an ordeal, man. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's kind of interesting that like everything but the stuff that looks store-bought, like the bunk bed frame and that, like pretty much like 85% of the stuff up here has been built from the land up here, the material up here, which is a very interesting way to build. And it's really good wood. Like all the wood is like laurel. You can look that up. It's the same in English as it is in Spanish, so there's no big difference there. And there isn't a day I wake up where I don't feel sort of blessed to be able to live here. I really do. I feel blessed. Yeah. All right, so tonight we're going to keep on with our theme of deconstructing the magic and the spelling that's been used against us to create this highly restrictive, highly punitive world that we're now living in. And tonight we're going to title the podcast Perpetual War. Now, I can't say for sure how long this concept of warfare has been going on. I don't have enough access to, let's call it the eternal memory or the Akashic records. I did write a book based on a number of Akashic record readings. And that one had it at 55 million years, which is a long time. I think it's fair to say that this is a place of perpetual conflict, the world. And there's a number of reasons why it's a world of perpetual conflict. Number one is us. We are, in fact, a highly conflicted species. Very, very few people, a very low percentage, less than 1%, a fraction of 1% of human beings ever truly achieve any real peace in their life. And because we're a magnetic species, our consciousness has magnetic properties. If we have conflict within us, we're going to manifest or magnetize conflict without us, outside of us. It's just the way we're built. There's no other way to describe it. And that's one of the reasons. But human conflict based on ego and self-importance, it has limitations and wake-up points, tripwires, where we sort of snap out of it. And we say, hey, this isn't worth it, and we drop whatever ambition or whatever goal we had, which is a good thing. So we can say that the perpetual war, the perpetual conflict, is not entirely the role or function of us. In the modern age, and I guess in historical terms and in sociological terms and in artistic terms, the modern age begins in the beginning of the 20th century. We named the leading writers of the early 20th century moderns. So James Joyce was a modern. T.S. Eliot was a modern. And before them, there was a kind of classical form to art. Very classical form. Rembrandt had the classical form. Michelangelo had the classical form. The early composers had the classical form. And modernism encroached into music through dissonance. You know, dissonance. Dissonance is... Let me look that up. It's worth looking up. Dissonance definition. Lack of harmony among musical notes, an unusual degree of dissonance for such choral styles. And outside of music, it's lack of agreement or harmony between people or things. The party faithful might be willing to put up with such dissonance amongst their candidates. So modernity, which precedes what we call the postmodern, I'd say we're fully through the postmodern now. I would say that we're going into, if the line of progression continues under the direction of the people who've brought us this far, and I always peg my timeline at the formation of the Bank of England, 1694. 1794, 1894, 1994, So basically 331 years. You're getting very close to 333. That's going to be from the formation of the Bank of England, which is the kickoff point. And I call it the kickoff point because it's the point at which everything fell into place. Okay? And this was a major campaign. And the campaign is run the same way in every generation. It's run by willing participants who are steeped in the religious ideology and experience, because it's an experiential religion, very tangible, very, very paranormal, the religion of the Black Star. Okay, so the collapsing star people, very destructive religion, very negative religion. Okay, it has its roots in the Abrahamic system. Okay, but not any one religion. I would say the Catholics were significantly involved in it. And people who debate this too much are still attached to their Abrahamic identity. Oh, it's the Catholics. Oh, it's the Jesuits. Oh, it's the Jews. It's the Zionists. It's the Pharisees. It's the Sadducees. It's the Protestants, don't you know? What are they protesting? You know, for me, I wash my hands of the whole Abrahamic system. I bear certain characteristics which will be indelible psychic attributes until the day I die, because culture is a permanent imprint. You know, if somebody reaches God consciousness in northern India, they're going to continue wearing a turban. They're not going to throw the turban away or the robes, because that's the way the culture of northern India dresses. So the cultural imprint persists even to the high level of consciousness. And I have certain cultural imprints which are indelible, and my cultural imprints are Scottish Catholic, which is very, I mean, once you tune into it, you can't untune it. You know, so another famous colonial Scottish Catholic is Mel Gibson. Okay, now he's still practicing. In fact, he's a true believer. God bless him, right? So I have aspects of my culture which are indelible now and will not go away, and they're Scottish Catholic. They have to do with temperament, the way I express myself. No, I mean, when I go into trance and meditation, I don't go into meditation as a Scottish Catholic. But when I come back down into body and reform myself, I slowly begin to tap into the memory of the body and the mind and this incarnation, and I go, oh yeah, this is what I do when the TV's not working. This is what I do when I'm upset with one of the dogs. Oh yeah, I'm Scottish Catholic. And it works just like that. It's really not that complicated. Not that complicated at all. And take a little break. And back. Had a plate of food brought to me. I never asked for it, but it had to be eaten. There you go. A little bit of refried beans with mozzarella cheese and some fried yuca. Straight up mountain food. So we were talking about dissonance, modernity, modernism, postmodernism. I don't think transhumanism is real, meaning that I don't think it is the next phase of humanity. I think it is the rat trap or the roach motel we go into and never come out of, and it's already open for business. I know. I hear you. I can hear you thinking, oh, Bruce, you're so cynical. Oh, Bruce, you're so negative. Oh, Bruce, you're always looking at the dark side of things. Well, let me ask you this. In a world of perpetual war, what other way is there to see it? When the perpetual war is over, I will see things a different way. But until that perpetual war is over, chances are The cynical interpretation of things is the correct interpretation of things. I remember when I was getting my journalism degree, I had a professor. He ran a research course. He literally taught you how to research. I don't know how relevant that would be now, because this was pre-internet, right? It was like going to public archives, records buildings, the morgue, courthouses, like old school gumshoe private investigator, investigative reporter kind of research. And I remember this was like my first week in my degree program at what was then called Ryerson University. And the professor's name was Dean Tudor, Tudor. And his first question to the class was, does anybody know the difference between a cynic and an optimist? And nobody raised their hand. And so he offered the answer. He said, the cynic is better informed. So now that's true when you're looking at the world sociologically, politically, economically, and within the framework of basic human nature. But it's not true when you go multidimensional, when you go into the God game. It flips, it inverts itself, and it goes back to everything is optimistic. Not by the fact that the outcome is beneficial all the time, but by virtue of the fact that there's always a reason for things. So, the 20th century, which I tried my best to capture in The Devil in Us, I'm not sure. I mean, I could write another book on the 20th century, like a second part to The Devil in Us. All the little movements in consciousness they made, especially through art and culture, to bring us to the point now where we don't have any culture anymore. We don't have culture. We don't have beauty. And beauty was a very important part of our spiritual outlook in the West. And if you think I'm exaggerating, go around the world and look at their museums. Nobody valued beauty the way the West did. Okay? Now, beauty is a revelation in an object. Or the object can be a vista, a view, a place, but generally something objective, like the Sistine Chapel, or David, the sculpture by Michelangelo, or Leonardo da Vinci's Man is the Measure of All Things. Okay? There was beauty, and beauty is characterized by harmony. And beauty is a harmonization of things so intense that it creates a singularity of perspective that passes a realization onto you. It's not a mental realization. It's just a realization. And you're left slack-jawed, and your thinking process is interrupted. And you just go, my God, that's beautiful. I used to feel that way. I still do, I suppose. I shouldn't say I used to. I feel that way about poetry, some music. I don't feel that way about any technological advancement. I don't feel that the iPhone was a beautiful thing. I don't feel that the home computer was a beautiful thing. They were useful things. Now, bear with me here, because this is a slightly complicated idea. And to understand what I'm talking about, you would have to have had an experience with beauty in your life. So think. It could be a young experience, a youthful experience. It could be something that at the time was beautiful, but you outgrew it as an object of beauty. It could be a book you read as a young adult. It could be the first time you encountered a beautiful song and you went, my God, that's beautiful. For me, most of my early experiences with beauty and truth, which I've always seen as the same thing, right? So I believe it was Wordsworth who said that, truth and beauty. Who is it that speaks about truth and beauty in poetry? Oh, it's John Keats. Fucking Keats, the English Romantic poet, is well known for his exploration of the relationship between beauty and truth in his poetry, particularly in his Ode on a Grecian Urn. He famously wrote, "Beauty is truth, truth beauty. That is all you know on earth and all you need to know." So yeah, so it's interesting that he said that in the period of the English Romantic movement in poetry. I know I know it's very difficult to comprehend in a day of TikTok and Facebook and X and whatever other social media you use, Instagram, Snapchat. But there was a time in our history where poets were rock stars. They were the most celebrated people in a society. And they were famous and they were revered and they represented a functioning society. Through most of the 20th century, the first 2/3 anyways, until 1975, you couldn't be taken seriously as a nation with a real culture unless you produced writers. Even here in Costa Rica, who is the famous Costa Rican writer who appears on one of their denotations of money? It's Carmen Lira. And she appears on the 5,000 colony bill, which is $10 US. And she was a prominent writer and activist known for her work Los Cuentos de mi tía Panchita, Tales of My Aunt Panchita. But anyways, you couldn't be taken seriously unless you had writers or poets. America followed this quite stringently. America was recognized as an emerging culture when Wallace Stevens published Leaves of Grass. But before the publication of Leaves of Grass, America was just considered like a backwater. And they were quite astounded in Europe that America could produce a poet like Walt Whitman and an epic operatic poem like Leaves of Grass. I celebrate myself, and what I assume you shall assume. For every atom is good belonging to me belongs to you. And that, by the way, is why I quote that poem in the Last Free Breath chapter of The Devil in Us. So, after Whitman came a bunch of great writers. They were called the Transcendentalist movement. And in that movement, you had Ralph Waldo Emerson. You had, I can't believe I'm forgetting his name. He's got my birthday. Who wrote Walden Pond? Henry David Thoreau. Yeah, thank you very much. I hate it when it's so arbitrary the way Google reads stuff out, right? If I knew I was going to get a good reading every time, I would just incorporate the desktop audio into the OBS streaming or recording production, and you would hear it super clearly because you wouldn't be hearing the microphone going into the speaker, but I can't count on it to do that reading every time. It's highly inconsistent. So where am I going with all of this? Well, I'm furthering my thesis, okay? And tonight's podcast is Perpetual War. I might not get it done tonight. I mean, sometimes it's difficult, but that's what I'm trying to do. Now, the whole concept of beauty. Now, there's a lot of people out there who talk about the Tartarian Empire. Okay? I myself have not done a deep dive into that research, and truth be told, I've always sort of looked upon it in the same way that I look upon flat Earth. And I realized a little while ago, a few months ago, that I may be a bit hard on Tartaria. Maybe it really did exist. Because, whereas flat Earth is complete nonsense, folks, okay? So, if flat Earth is right, then everything is wrong. Okay, the molecular structure, the structure of atoms, the principle of a neutron, electrons, and protons. Remember, micro, macro, as above, so below. So an atom is basically the same, depending on the complexity of the atom, but it's basically the same composition as a solar system, where the sun is the nucleus and you have things orbiting around it in an energy field held together by a kind of a magnetism we don't quite understand. So I don't think all that's wrong. I think that's fundamentally accurate. So I don't believe in flat Earth. But Tartaria, I'm beginning to take another look at, but I don't have time to do a deep dive on it. And my research days are done for stuff like that. And what does it mean? What does it prove if you prove it? Oh, Tartaria existed. Okay, I mean, I already wrote The Galactic Historian, and that shows the rising and falling of dozens of civilizations on this planet. But if Tartaria existed, what it suggests is that the rise and fall cycle is much quicker than we thought. It's like changing sets on a Broadway production. The curtain closes, the stagehands come out, you hear a bit of shuffling behind the curtains, curtain opens 90 seconds later, and it's a whole new set. They just push it in on wheels. You go from the interior of an apartment to an outdoor set, and boom, just like that. And if Tartaria is real, they can almost do a complete set redesign of the human experience in 1 or 2 generations, which is suggestive of a power behind the curtain that is extremely disturbing, almost indomitable if they could do it, which is why I've been hesitant to endorse Tartaria. But that said, there seem to be a lot of architectural anomalies that can't be expressed in the normal progression. And when you do look at some of those European structures that have survived, like Notre Dame and some of the cathedrals and some of the churches, I mean, holy cow, man. How are you telling me that illiterate stonemasons built those? I mean, that is the very height of architecture. We don't have architecture like that today. So possibly Tartaria existed, but that's not something I want to get into. That's an archaics topic, that guy on archaics, okay? But what I'm saying and what I can attest to and what has made me look at Tartaria a different way is there is a profound shift in our aesthetic sensibilities between the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century. Okay, we go from William Butler Yeats, a classical romantic Irish poet, to T.S. Eliot, and they overlap each other, meaning that they're both alive at the same time. Hang on a second, am I right about that? Did T.S. Eliot and William Butler Yeats ever meet? Yes, T.S. Eliot and William Butler Yeats did meet. They likely had their first interaction soon after Eliot arrived in London. They had some contact before 1922, with Eliot noting in 1922 that Yeats was one of the very small number of people with whom one can talk profitably of poetry, according to the Eliot Hale letters of the T.S. Eliot website. So anyways, but they're very different poets. Like Eliot is a modernist poet edited by Ezra Pound, and William Butler Yeats represents the old guard. What period of poetry does William Butler Yeats belong to? Well, he's also associated with the modernist period of poetry, although he also had roots in the Romantic and Victorian traditions. So he transitioned. Now, you want to hear something interesting about William Butler Yeats? William Butler Yeats was an initiate in the Order of the Golden Dawn. Okay, and that was a secret society / occult organization. And do you know who else was also a member of the Order of the Golden Dawn? Our friend Aleister Crowley, the wickedest man in the world. And they hated each other. But it's interesting that a poet like William Butler Yeats and a magician like Aleister Crowley can be members of the same secret society in Britain and go to meetings together, like lodge meetings together. There's all this stuff like just sort of lying right out there that if you're not immersed in classicism, or it's not classicism. Classicism predates the 20th century. The 20th century is the beginning of modernism. But my point is simply that there's all this connective tissue out there. You know, people have this idea that these things we talk about are conspiracy theories. Well, I mean, yes and no. Not really, though. I mean, you can see the secret societies all through European history in the art and the poetry. But you have to know what you're looking for. And they're not going to teach it to you at university. For example, the example I always give is The Stolen Child by William Butler Yeats. In fact, I'll see if I can find it. The Stolen Child by William Butler Yeats. So, William Butler Yeats lived from 1865 to 1939. He didn't live that long. 35 and 39 years would be 74. He was a relatively young man when he passed, by today's standards. And he received the 1923 Nobel Prize for Literature. But look, hey man, this isn't a poetry podcast. I'm getting way off track here. I'm talking about perpetual war. So the 20th century began a campaign of demoralization of the human race that was extremely intentional. Okay? Now, you could make a sociological case that, well, hey, Bruce, I mean, don't you think the mass casualties and the modality of war in World War I, the mechanization of war, the first war to use big guns, to use navies, biplanes, and mass killings and mustard gas and the horrible... I mean, wars always existed, but it was always a sort of, for lack of a better way of saying it, an honorable trade. You know, men met in a field, and they basically had the same weaponry, which took years to master if it was an extension of the body, like a sword, years to master if it was a non-mechanized armament like a bow and an arrow. And there was a class of being we called the warrior, who was a very important figure. And they spent their life studying and practicing with instruments of war, which had to be mastered. And therefore, all of the really dangerous people were very highly, for the most part, highly disciplined people. Okay? Because you could not become that dangerous without the discipline. A classic example is the Japanese samurai. Okay? And then the World War I, the first 20th century war, when we get the factories off the ground and the industrialization starts, that's a whole different war. People who would have been in their 60s or 70s in World War I, or their 80s, they'd never seen anything like that. I mean, if they were born in 1850, they would be 68 years old at the beginning of World War I. You know, the wars they saw were more about marching troops and muskets and stuff like that. But Warfare always required a certain kind of person, a certain kind of training, and it was assumed that that training would come with its own safeguards. Now anybody can kill. Just buy an illegal gun off the street, a 15-clip Beretta or Glock, go to a school, and you can kill 10 people. No training, no nothing. You couldn't do that 200 years ago. You can maybe poison lunch at a school and poison and kill a bunch of people, but even then, maybe the doctors could save a number of them because common poisons would have had common remedies. But the level of violence we're seeing now and the instruments of death that have been introduced to the human race and liberalized in terms of their accessibility is truly alarming. Truly alarming. I'm going to take another quick break. Okay, I'm back. So, to get back on track, what I'm saying is that the 20th century seems to be focused and concerted really, really intensely on conflict. And it's my belief, largely, let's say, intuitive, that this conflict has been centered on the migration of the Jews back to Israel, which I'm not quite convinced is entirely a Jewish idea. Okay? So that would mean that there's an outside third-party force within Judaica, so certain rabbinical circles or certain members of, let's call it, the Black Star religion, and certain external forces which would also, in my estimation, be representative of the Black Star religion. The 20th century has been, hands down, the bloodiest century in the existence of human beings, at least in the limited recording we have now, which is maybe 3,000 or 4,000 years at most. Barring the non-verified theories of Graham Hancock and people like that. Now, I'm not saying that in a disparaging way. I think Graham Hancock is absolutely telling the truth. In fact, I think, as I've said on my show, that probably the Falun Gong guy is right, and there have been at least 87 risings and fallings of the human race. It's interesting the way the whole thing works. On the break I just took, I looked up the population of the world at the time of Christ, and they can't be certain, but they estimate that it's between 170 and 300 million people, which is astounding when you think about it. I mean, there are 350 million people that we know of just in the United States right now. Okay? So how they come up with 170 million or 300 million, I don't know. But we've gone from that to probably just, I don't know what we're at now. There's been a significant population loss. So we're entering into a decline now. Now, it's my belief that the population boom and the coming cull is a ritual. And I think that the ritual is predicated on the old magic, in which the death of the human beings is in some way offered up, and there's an equitable exchange, okay? And again, this goes back to yesterday's podcast about the Kogi, and how if you take something from nature, you have to give something from nature, to nature. Now, I don't think nature is too discriminating about what the gift is, okay? I mean, it could be a prayer on a rock. It could be a human life. We know that human sacrifice in a ritualistic way has come up in the human experience, at least in Europe and in America, through several cultures. Okay? I'm pretty sure it existed in the Middle East. We know about, Solomon's wife who worshipped Moloch and they sacrificed babies. And the temple to Moloch was allegedly built right beside the first temple of Solomon. Now, I think all of that is metaphorical. I don't think there was a first temple of Solomon. I don't think King Solomon himself ever actually existed. Everything is in code, okay? Everything is in code. In a way, a lot of the work I'm doing now is building upon and finalizing what Jordan Maxwell tried to tell us, but never quite came out and told us. in a simple declarative sentence. Not because he didn't know, but because in the time he lived, it was probably too dangerous. I believe, intuitively, that something significant has changed, and just changed this year. Okay? And it has to do with the voluminous appearance of unidentified aerial phenomenon, which is not necessarily extraterrestrials. I think a lot of those are living plasma beings. But those plasma beings come in and out of the human experience at certain key periods. Okay? So what is the Perpetual War? And the war that began at the end of the 19th century and has gone all through the 20th century. It is the war of the Black Star cult. And it is a war against the Creator. It is a war against God. And it is a war against us who serve the Creator, who understand that we're expressions of the Creator. Now, you could look upon this as a glitch in our matrix, an experiment in which the Creator was trying to understand something when a universe with free will was created. Because not all universes have free will. There are universes where the growth to consciousness as a particulate of the Creator, a drop in the ocean, is very measured and consistent for all the individual beings within that universe. And there's nothing really untoward or destabilizing that happens in those experiences, unlike the free will space, in which all kinds of crazy stuff happens. But the natural conclusion of a free will universe would be the emergence of a group of sentient beings who would challenge God. It's logical. It's natural. Don't think in terms of good and evil. That's an entrained way of thinking. Okay? So it's a perpetual war because the war can't end, because God can't end, because God is a perpetual being. And that's why we're in a perpetual war. I know, it sounds like a facile answer. I'll give you that, but, I mean, what more can you say about it? Now, remember what else you've learned on the Talamanca Review. This is not the demons, okay? This is not Satan or Lucifer. This is human beings in collaboration with extra-dimensional entities. And those extra-dimensional entities may very well come from out of our universe. There are many stories out there now in the common lore, the recent common lore, of beings in our universe that do not originate here, like the reptilians. It is said, my source being Alex Collier, that's not something I'd footnote in a graduate essay in university, but it's suitable enough for the Talamanca Review. Alex Collier says that the reptilians were brought here through a black hole, literally expunged from another universe that had had enough of them and dumped here and became our problem. Okay? And not just humanity on planet Earth, but all sentient beings in this universe who are in service and harmony with the Creator. Now, the war we're in has many fronts. It's not just weapons and bombs and terrorism and financial terrorism. It has many, many fronts. And its principal characteristic is the deliberate diminution. Let me see if that's the right word. Diminution definition.
This is the definition of
Oh, stop it, will ya?
A reduction in the size, extent, or importance of something.
Yeah, a reduction in the size, extent, or importance of something. The war is on the diminution of our relationship with the divine, which is a huge sin. It is a sin that literally hijacks the growth cycle of this species. And this would be the chief characteristic of the intelligence wing of the war against God. Okay? Now, it's not per se that the entities we're up against hate God per se. It's just that they've created a fate for themselves where they can't know God. And so if they can't know God, they don't want anybody else to know God because they don't want to live in a universe with beings that know God. Banal answer. I'll give you that. Not a fancy answer, but that's the answer I have for you. Okay? So it's not demons and it's not Satan or Lucifer. The religions we live by in the West are a cover story. That's why I showed you the Kogi yesterday. Spirituality begins in a relationship with nature and it goes from there. Okay? You don't skip over it. You don't just say the Jesus is going to take me to heaven and skip over all of the lessons to be learned in the fourth dimension with the entities that govern this reality. Now, this is not to say that you should spend all your time interacting with elementals or these energies, but you should become aware of them because they're a rung on the ladder. The religions we've been given give us a 12-step ladder and tell us we can't step on rung 1 to 11. We have to, from a standing still position, jump up to the 12th rung of the ladder. What sense does that make? And if you step on the first, second, and third rung, oh, it's demonology, don't you know? It's ridiculous. You've been gaslit for 2,000 years if you're Christian, 3,000 years if you're Jewish. Okay? You've been absolutely gaslit by psychopaths because the Black Star cult is the oldest cult on this planet. The remnants of the Babylonians, the Phoenicians, the Egyptians, all of the worst aspects of that society aggregated into an occult arsenal that forms the battalion we're up against now. This is the perpetual war. But it's coming to an end now. I don't know exactly why or how. I can't even give you a rational reason for how I know it's coming to an end. I just know. Okay? This whole world we've been living in is a fucking lie. And if people and human beings were just given proper spiritual instruction, this earth was always meant to be a paradise for us. But it gets fucked up by the 1 in 100,000, and that's the numbers of the Black Star cult. They're not huge. They're probably at their largest membership now, but I suspect that they're culling their own now. Okay? They're culling their own membership now. And there's a lot of phony information coming out, like Harvey Weinstein, who, by the way, didn't do any of those things. You know, if you're following Candace Owens, Harvey didn't do those things. Harvey doesn't have a working penis. Harvey can't ejaculate. Okay? So everything they told us about Harvey Weinstein is a lie. Why did they throw Harvey under the bus? Well, because they don't want us looking any farther than that. Same thing with Jeffrey Epstein. These are small fish. Okay? The white whale is still out there. And it's in the last place you'd think to look. I'm Bruce McDonald. This has been Perpetual War. And this has been the Talamanca Review. Peace out.